Whoa!
Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the PHNX Sun Devils show, coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Head to any Circle K Arizona location where you get any size Polar Pop or Froster, which is 79 cents now through September 3rd.
And I got a question. Are you in the market for a home? If so, get a hold of Coach Stark today. He will help you out. You can get in touch with him at 623-695-3929. Go to CoachStarkHomes.com or follow him at Coach Stark Homes as he is presenting sponsor as we get into football season. Fall camp has officially wrapped, Anthony Totri.
10 days. Guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Look, we got DJ Coop. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's just rolling the music. I love it. I'm Anthony Totri. This is Long Neck Larry, also known as Erik or Ruby. We got Gabe in the chat. We have a jam-packed show for everybody today. A lot on the menu. Obviously, Bobby Hurley in Arizona State, they have a date with the Blue Devils. We'll get all into that exhibition game. We're going to talk about the end of Arizona State's fall camp. Kenny had some words, some interesting words at the end of camp. And then, of course, we have our takeaways from the one, the only fall camp as well.
Shout out Bill, says he lives in Philly, never gets to hear us live. Well, you made it on a day where my neck is looking especially long.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a special day today.
It's a special day.
It's for Long Neck Professor
Any reason particularly why it's extra long today?
I think maybe it's the cut of the shirt. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but it's just, maybe it's the Camp T doc trailer that we're dropping at the end of this.
We got so much.
Yes. So for those of you who have been asking, the little mini documentary that we're putting together, they say, let's go Long Neck in the chat. On Camp T, Kyle and I, we finished that up. It is going to be live today at 2:15. And during this show, at the very tail end, we're going to play a couple minutes from it. Ended up being about 5.5 minutes long. But thank you, Bill, for being here. Gabe, David,
all the homies.
10 days, but first, some basketball?
Yeah, let's get into some hoops. I'm waiting for JJB to spawn at some point because that's absolutely bound to happen.
I'm summoning him.
Bobby Hurley tweeted this statement earlier today in regards to that exhibition game. So it says, quote, "I'm grateful for John Shayer and Duke basketball for working with Arizona State basketball to make this exhibition game a reality. It will be special for me to return to Cameron Indoor. Our team is excited for the opportunity to compete against a storied basketball program prior to embarking on our regular season schedule. The collaboration between Duke and Arizona State to put together this charity exhibition game supporting Duke Children's Hospital is very meaningful to both programs." It's going to be awesome. October 27th, I believe, Arizona State traveling to Cameron Indoor Stadium, obviously, to take on a really, really storied basketball program in Duke. Erik, obviously, it's great for the charity aspect. That is phenomenal in its own right. But for Arizona State, I think that's going to be even bigger, even though it doesn't count toward their actual record this season.
Yeah, it's kind of like a win-win scenario. I mean, I know some of our diehards were in there kind of talking about how it might be a little ugly if Duke plays like Duke. But I think one thing we know about this basketball season with Bobby Hurley and the Sun Devils is A, they're not afraid of competition. They've shown that in their regular season schedule and their non-conference schedule. But B, they have the talent to hang.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to come out here and immediately just go, they're going to beat Duke, even though it is an exhibition game. But
that'd be nice.
This isn't like Arizona State of last year, man. This is Arizona State who has a couple 5-stars at their disposal, right? Presumably in the starting lineup. Like there are levels to this, and I do believe that at the end of the day, this is going to be a great recruiting tactic as well, where you can say, listen, come to our program, play in the Big 12, play against the best of the best. But then at the same time, we might be playing a Duke in a preseason game. We might be playing Gonzaga in a non-conference game. Those are things that high-level players want to play on. Those are stages that they want to be seen on. And even though it's an exhibition, if Josan Sannon goes off in an exhibition game against Duke, the world will notice a little bit more than any other exhibition game that you could probably imagine. Plus, you're doing it for a good cause. Bobby Hurley is going to get a lot of well-deserved love and attention for his time at Duke and returning there as well. There's not many ways that it could go wrong besides just like a 90-point blowout.
Yeah, and again, it's just an exhibition game, but for Arizona State, it's going to be a nice test ahead of the season. Because you already saw the non-conference schedule that Arizona State is going to have. You have a team like Gonzaga that Arizona State is going to play. So you've got Gonzaga, you've got Duke. When you get to conference play, you're going to have Kansas, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, Baylor. Like it's going to be constant blue blood battles every single game for Arizona State. And right on schedule, JJP
He's here.
spawning in the chat. So huge. Duke, Hurley, Blue Devils, Sun Devils. So huge.
It's a good old-fashioned devil off.
Yeah, there you go. Who's the real devil? Who's the real devil? No, it's in all seriousness, again, it's awesome for the charity aspect of it. But I think for Bobby Hurley's squad, and somebody had said it in the Die Hard Discord earlier today, Bobby's on his I'm not afraid of anybody.
No.
Like this is, and the best part about it, I think too, regardless of the results of how some of these games go this season, because it is going to be tough and you're obviously not going to win every single game, but you're going to catch it all on camera. Right.
Sure.
With the cameras behind the scenes. And like you said, it's going to be huge for some of these freshman players, some of these transfers that crave the ability to go on a national stage and play these types of programs night in and night out. And you just added another one that, again, it's going to leave a mark on this year's team, regardless of the result.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be something to be said for a lot of these players, especially these freshmen, but also let's not forget the fact that a lot of these transfers as well. You're going to be playing in the Big 12 this season.
Yeah.
That is a step up, right? Even those who were returning from the Pac-12 and Adam Miller. And I think there is going to be something special in tone setting for this team to walk into Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Yeah.
And walk through the halls of, Duke and go and play a storied program like Duke.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to kind of get that mindset right of, listen, this is not a season to mess around. This is not a season of easy opponents and trying to get back on track and sneak into the tournament. This is a season, it's a gauntlet. This entire season is a gauntlet.
Yeah.
And you're not only going to have the importance of being at Duke, but like JJ mentions, and we've mentioned before, this documentary on everything as well, like, the return to Duke and the return of the history of Bobby Hurley, there might be a future recruit that is not really aware of who Bobby Hurley was before he was a coach. I know that it might be like, for us, we sit back, how could you not know?
One of the greatest college basketball point guards in the history of the game.
But I wouldn't be shocked if there are some recruits out there right now that don't understand the gravity of who he was to this game. Mm-hmm. And I think that this return is going to give him a platform to remind everybody and hopefully to show off what he's doing in this stage of his basketball career. And I think that this is the team that he can make a statement with. Hopefully it's just a good competitive game. That's all you really want, even in an exhibition.
Let's get way too far ahead of ourselves.
Sure.
Here. What would a win do for this team and for Hurley ahead of this season?
A lot. Obviously it wouldn't be on the record, but that is something that morale-wise and for bringing a team together that hasn't played together and that will be facing quite the hard schedule in non-conference and conference play.
Yeah.
To even an exhibition game say we beat Duke, there is not a lot else that you can do before a season to install that much confidence. I don't care that it doesn't go on the record. I don't care that it technically doesn't, quote, matter. That matters. That 100% matters.
It matters. And again, like you talk about some of these young guys, these transfers, like that grew up loving college basketball, and you watch Duke, you watch Kansas, you watch Gonzaga, you watch Arizona, you watch Houston, you watch these just ginormous basketball programs that doesn't matter what year we're talking about, they're in the NCAA tournament. And so it's great, obviously, for that side of things, for recruiting. I think it's also going to be a great point for this team to really see where they're at.
Yeah.
Right? We talked a lot about the non-conference games early on, just in regards to the fact that they're not taking any cupcake games, right? Because you don't have them in conference play in the Big 12, the basketball conference, and you certainly don't have them in non-con. And now we're getting to a point where we're scheduling charity exhibition games against blue blood programs.
Yeah.
That says a lot to me about Bobby Hurley's desire to not have this be a rebuild type of thing, to not have it be we're headed into year one of the Big 12 and we're just going to see what we're capable of. This signals to me, regardless of it being a charity exhibition game, that this is the year that Bobby Hurley is shooting for the moon.
Sure.
And that's what you need to have in year one of the Big 12, because you win these games. People take notice when the portal opens. People take notice when it's time to start signing recruits. Hey, remember early on, yes, it didn't count toward the record, but you remember when Arizona State beat Duke? You remember when Arizona State beat Kansas? You remember when Arizona State beat Gonzaga? Like, those are the types of games and performances that stick in the minds of transfers all year long, especially if you are on those teams. Something we haven't talked about in regards to any of this is Arizona State is playing the top programs in the nation, bar none. If you go out and you kick these teams' asses, which I'm not saying Arizona State's going to do, or if you show your side as a coach, which players love Bobby Hurley and his coaching style, when the portal opens, just because you're a blue blood program doesn't mean that your players don't hit the portal.
No.
Duke, Gonzaga, Kansas, again, Houston, whatever. When portal season comes, those players are like, oh, wait, I remember playing against Arizona State. I remember the energy that they played with. I remember the style of play that which they played with. I remember Bobby Hurley being animated and fighting for his players on the sideline. Like, that is going to leave a mark on potential incoming transfers as well.
Absolutely. There are two phrases I kind of want to throw out here that I think apply to this situation. Phrase number one is dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. And phrase number two is people will only take you as seriously as you take yourself. And this program had every opportunity to schedule some cakewalks, to ease their way into the first year of the Big 12, and to try to kind of boost Bobby Hurley's record up after a very disappointing season last year. Let's not mince words. Last season was bad. And it wasn't all on Bobby, but it certainly came back on his name as well.
Yeah.
Right? But instead, Bobby Hurley said, we're going to take this program and we're going to dress for the job we want, which is a Big 12 contender.
Yeah.
Which is a tournament team, which is a team that needs to be taken seriously. And what do those teams do? They don't run from the competition. And I know that this is an exhibition game and I get it, but just having Duke on the schedule, period, will mean something. It will send a message.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically, JJ said it, it's basically a spring training game. But still, you are going in and you are saying, we are not afraid. We will play you, Gonzaga. Because guess what? When we go into the Big 12 play, into conference play, we're going to be playing basically like 8 of the top teams in college basketball.
Yeah. Every week.
All the time. And at the end of the day, if you didn't walk like this at the beginning of the season, you didn't dress like you're going to be a contender, you're not going to be ready to face those teams.
You're right.
Trial by fire. Maybe they play Gonzaga and they're not ready. Maybe they're just not good enough that week. But then they understand that and they grow, and by the time they're playing a Baylor, a Houston, a Kansas, an Iowa State. Well, hey, we've played Duke. We've played Gonzaga. Like, we've played teams that are going to have legitimate Final Four and championship aspirations.
Yeah.
I just think that this is the first step of other people taking Arizona State University basketball as seriously as what right now Bobby Hurley is taking it.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, we're going to talk ASU football here in just a second. Camp wrapped up. We have a lot to get into as it relates to Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils just 10 days before kickoff against Wyoming. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Shady Rays. Of course, people in the chat, people on social media. I don't understand why you guys wear sunglasses indoors for a podcast. Well, I'll tell you what. Do you wear sunglasses outside to block out the sun? Yes. Do you wear them when you're driving to block out the sun? Yes. Well, guess what? Shady Rays, they're not just for blocking out the sun. They're not just for looking great, but they're also for blocking out the haters. And from time to time, we have haters in the chat. So that's why we are rocking our Shady Rays.
Can I tell you why I wear mine?
Why do you wear it?
Because you're just such a bright, shining star. It hurts my eyes a little bit.
Well, shucks. Buddy.
And like these lights, they're pretty bright.
They're pretty bright. They're pretty bright. But we don't fold under pressure. We don't fold.
We throw on our Shady Rays.
Lights. We throw on our Shady Rays. And you guys can too. Shady Rays, they have a ton of different styles, more than likely in your team's favorite color. So ahead of kickoff, get ready for the Sun Devil season. Grab your Shady Rays in maybe maroon and gold. Maybe you want to just rock the all black, or maybe you want to get icy with it and just go with the all white sunglasses. Guess what? Shady Rays, they have it for you. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or maybe they take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every single pair, Erik, is backed by lost or broken replacements. And if you don't love your shades, Exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use that code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. I'll say it again for the people in the back hard of hearing. PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
People always wonder, like you said, why are you guys wearing sunglasses? Why are you guys so animated? What's the deal?
Come on!
Thank you.
Come on!
Okay. All right. I appreciate the visual. But it's because we're comfortable in our own skin. We're comfortable who we are. And a great place to just do you is at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. We have a live fantasy football draft at Wild Horse Pass next Thursday, where I will not be in the league. I'll be producing the show. But Shane, Totri, Saul, Espo, Max, all of them are going to be live drafting. We're going to have a whole broadcast and coverage of it live from Wild Horse Pass. And guys, you can come out and you can experience that with us. And if you cannot make it to that, we're going to have so many other events at Gila River Resorts and Casinos throughout this next year. It's going to be such a fun time. Or if you just want a staycation, you want to go out for a night with friends, anything like that, you need to go to any of their 4 locations, Wild Horse Pass, Lone Butte, Vequiva, Santan Mountain, and you can experience the best the Valley has to offer. They've got slots, live table games, all of the action you can imagine at their sports books, and of course, they've got the food there as well, from upscale to approachable, from poolside to a quick burger and fries to Asian fusion. Whatever you are trying to be that night, you can be it at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. We'll be hosting events all year, including Cards and Sons watch partings and more, so stay tuned for how you can come hang out with us. Just remember, if you're there, or if you're not, it's always good advice. You do you. At Gila River Resorts and Casinos, visit playatgila.com for more details.
Dude, I'm juiced. I'm so juiced for that fantasy draft, like orange juiced. Like that's where I'm at
That's
today.
Big time juice.
Yeah, big time juice. Grapefruit juice. I'm on that too. Cranberry juice. I'm all the juices today.
How juiced are you, Kyle? Because Kyle's going to be in the draft too.
I'm juiced.
You real juiced?
Kyle's a low-key threat, I think, to win it all.
Low-key threat?
I think he's not going to talk a lot of shit, but he's going to get a solid
Kyle's
team.
actually the biggest shit talker at the office.
In his head.
Yeah.
In his head.
In my head.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. Ryan Neal in the chat. I don't really think the nation is going to take ASU basketball seriously purely based on an exhibition game. I would disagree with you. If this was an exhibition game against anybody else, maybe. But this is Duke basketball.
I think this is the first step. I don't think anybody's going to take them seriously after this. I don't think that this...
If you go beat Duke at Cameron Indoor, I don't care if it's an exhibition game. That is a serious win.
Yeah, it's a serious win. I think that it is, no matter what, is the first step in the nation taking ASU seriously. I think that there is going to need to be more, even if it is a win, and a win would help. But
it's a toddler learning how to walk, right? The very first steps, you want to make sure they're on camera, okay? And that's exactly what this season is going to be for ASU hoops.
Shining stars
in that exhibition basketball game. But let's transition from the hardwood to the practice field. Obviously, Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils now just 10 days away from kickoff. The Sam Levitt number of days away from kickoff. If you follow us on X, we had this amazing graphic made by our lovely graphics team over at All City. 10 days till kickoff. Go like it, go retweet it, go share it with your friends. We saw the Sun Devils out at practice today, kind of going about 50%, right? Because school starts tomorrow. Then you've got game prep, right? Mm-hmm. Kenny said it after practice that after this morning's kind of walkthrough-esque practice, staff immediately is going to prep for Wyoming. It's officially that time. Game week is upon us. But what did we see at the end of fall camp? Well, it was a mid-practice.
Yeah.
It was a
I
totally
remember asking
mid-practice.
You came in and I was like, hey, man, how was camp today? And you're like, it was the worst practice yet.
Yeah. But look.
Not in like it's just like, it's like you said, it's the end of camp. It's a walkthrough. The real prep starts tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, those aren't my words, right? Those aren't my words by any means. This is what Kenny Dillingham had to say about the energy and effort at today's practice.
Well, we wanted to get legs back, obviously getting into this part of the season. You know, we've gone pretty hard here in camp. And then 2, situational football. Like we had 2 minutes, we had into game scenarios. We had a whole bunch of special teams, right? We had a bad day, though. There was a very, very poor focus. Started with the staff, started with myself, to the staff, to the players. That was our worst day of fall camp.
Ooh. Worst day of fall camp. And Kenny Dillingham taking the brunt of it, saying that's on me. Starts with the staff. And really that trickles down to the players. Again, I think it's fair blame across the board. Kenny said it. They need to be better in terms of taking each practice, regardless of walkthrough, regardless of intensity, needs to feel like you've got a game the next day or a couple days out. And Dilly, there's no such thing when it comes to Kenny Dillingham's teams as back-to-back bad days. So Friday's practice closed to the media, so we're not going to get a real look there. Saturday they do practice, and then they hop into game week. You got a Kenny presser on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday they've got practice, and then you just kind of full steam ahead. But things did look a little different today. Josh Atkins was playing left tackle today, which is interesting because Emmit Bohle has been playing left tackle for the majority of fall camp. He has been the number one left tackle. Obviously, Jalen Klemm, the Washington transfer offensive lineman, still nowhere to be found. Don't expect a return from him anytime soon.
Yeah.
But Bohle was working with the twos at right tackle. They kicked him back over. Atkins, again, playing left tackle today. It's going to be interesting to see as we inch closer if that remains how they structure the offensive line. That would be concerning for me because Emmit Bohle's been playing left tackle the entire fall camp, and now we're getting into game week, and you're moving him to the twos and right tackle. That is going to be something that is you're going to want to keep an eye on it really through next week, and then when the Wyoming game kicks off, just how good the left and right tackles are going to be this season.
I mean, do you think that they're just kind of giving him a look at a different position in case they need to use him there?
That's possible.
I would imagine if he's been running with the ones in a certain sense for a majority of camp and then the last day they change things up, that's not going to be like a complete change in responsibility, right? Like that's not the way to do that.
You never know.
I mean, maybe they realize that they need somebody to, be in that backup spot possibly. That's a little tough. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I still trust Kenny, and I would assume that there's a good reason for it.
For me, it's interesting because Atkins, to me, and again, I'm not a professional football coach, but he projects more as a guard. He's 6'3", 300-plus pounds, but he doesn't necessarily have the ideal length that you would want in a left tackle. And I get it. The guard spots are kind of what they are. Expect to see Cade Briggs out there when Arizona State kicks off against Wyoming at right guard, Lee Fautanu at center, and then, of course, Ben Coleman, the former Cal transfer who was here but didn't play a whole lot last season because of injury. He'll be at left guard. Now the tackle spots become really, really interesting. Still expect to see Mad Max at right tackle. Now at left tackle, you don't really know what's going to happen. Yes, that could be just to give a look to Atkins and maybe push Bohle a little bit more ahead of the start of the season. But regardless of who's playing left and right tackle, we'll get into the takeaways at the end of the show today, but I still need to see something from those guys. Troy O'Meary, we've talked a lot about these wide receivers throughout fall camp. He ran with the threes again today. Now, I know that is interesting to some people because Troy O'Meary was probably the second best overall receiver for the Sun Devils last year, not named Elijah Badger.
Right.
But you have guys now, Malik McLean, Jordan Tyson, Melquan Stovall, those are your three. Those are the three guys that you can fully expect to see starting against Wyoming. Jake Smith will likely be the first wide receiver off the bench, rotating in with whether that be Melquan Stovall, whether that be a Jordan Tyson. Xavier Guillory also working with the twos. The freshman walk-on, Derek Usiba, who's had a phenomenal spring and fall camp. He was also running with the twos today. That is something to keep an eye on. And then, of course, Troy O'Meary running with the threes. Not sure if that's just to push him a little bit more or if he's simply fallen down the depth chart simply because of how good everybody else has looked. We know O'Meary has missed a little bit of time throughout camp with certain stuff. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front, but I don't think people should be too concerned about the wide receivers.
Well, and that's the thing with Troy. You could be putting him down to the third string to push him. You could be down to the third string because you just simply have so much talent in that room. I understand. You lose Elijah Badger and you're talking too much talent in that room.
No such thing.
But I think if you're a third string on this team, you're still going to be playing. Yeah. That's the thing is Troy is still going to be playing. I think almost everybody in this wide receiver room is going to get at least some sort of burn. So I don't know, man. I'm not too worried about that one at all.
Well, the last thing that we'll talk about as we kind of get through fall camp here is Kenny was asked just about the leaders defensively, the big communicators, and who you can expect to see be the guy, right? Mm-hmm. He mentioned a few names: Keyshawn Elliott, the New Mexico State transfer linebacker who expects to start as well; Cole Martin, our guy going to be rotating in at nickel; Shamari Simmons, also a name brought up. However, despite having so many communicators and defensive leaders, Kenny said now it's time to find an alpha. Now he needs somebody to go out there and be that guy. It's great that you have a bunch of different leaders on that team, but when it comes game time and it's 3rd and 10 and the team is looking for one individual to be that voice, they need to find it. And in reality, with 10 days left, you got to find that before kickoff in my estimation.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something that they've been trying to find throughout all of this, but I also think that as the season goes on, that water is going to rise to its level.
Yeah, I agree.
It would be completely ideal to know who that is today, or 3 weeks ago, or 6 months ago. That is what you would ideally want in any situation. But I feel like with so many moving parts with this team, and I'll get into one of my takeaways. Plus, I think a lot of people who can step up into that role. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be kind of like hey, water's going to find its level, and we're going to find out really who is the leader in that way for this team when the going gets tough.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that. It's going to come. It's just a matter of how quickly does that happen. And for Arizona State, again, just 10 days till kickoff, you would rather have that sooner rather than later.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing is you want answers as soon as possible, but it's a matter of will you realistically get them when you want them.
That's a fair estimation.
And with the puzzle pieces that is this roster and how many different parts are going in, I mean, the person who has to be the constant voice throughout all of that's the coaching staff. And then I think people are like he mentioned, like he said names, but like he mentioned, people are rising up. But I don't think you're really going to get your answer until it's week 3, week 4, and you see how people respond.
And I don't think this is a problem, right? Having a lot of guys that are vocal that want to be that guy. It's just a matter of every team needs one, right?
You need a leader.
You do. Defensively and offensively.
You need multiple leaders. But within those, you need a leader. You need your guy.
You need the alpha.
Sure.
Is what Kenny called it. So that's pretty much the gist of what we saw from fall camp today. An interesting part of fall camp came after practice when Kenny was asked about potential for preseason games in college football. It's ironic. I brought it up to Jordan Ham out at practice earlier today. I'm like, I think this team could really benefit from doing what they do in the NFL around this time, doing joint practices, right? Whether that be with a California school like a UCLA or having NAU come down and doing a joint practice with them. I think that could be beneficial for both programs,
that's a great take.
Either side. So Kenny was asked post-practice what he would think of the idea of preseason games in college football. This is what he had to say.
Oh, yeah, preseason. Anytime you can play football versus somebody else, it's huge. I mean, it's how you play the game. The best way to emulate a game is to play the game, and we try to simulate that versus ourselves, right? But you see the same people over and over and over and over again, like, you got to try to find a way to break up the monotony of a camp, whereas they get to practice versus other teams, right, to break up the monotony and to get different looks. If you're an odd team, you may get to go practice versus a 4-down team and get different looks, or vice versa, right? If you're a 11 personnel open team, you may get to go play a 13 and 22 personnel team with bunch sets to practice different looks. You don't really get that in college. So whatever your offense is, whatever your defense is, if you're not getting those looks, right, if you're not multiple on those sides of the ball, then you've got to create it, right, with scout teams and walk-ons, but not the speed that the NFL gets to create it as. So I definitely think it would be an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be beneficial to have preseason games in college football. The idea that you constantly, for weeks on end, are just going up against your own guys. You're kind of taking it half speed. Yes, there is tackling at a level, but you're never going out there with the intention of like, this is the opposition, right? So to be able to have that, like Kenny said, get different looks. If you are Arizona State and you're running your 4-2-5 defense and you can get the opportunity to go against an offense that maybe is a little bit more spread than what Arizona State will be this season. That would be beneficial down the line, right? You may not see that immediately, but when you get to points in the season, having that experience going up against different formations, different offensive units, different talent, right? We know Arizona State's really talented on the back end, both defensively and then in the backfield. So what if they went up against a team like a USC or a UCLA in a preseason game that is likely going to be a little bit more spread with options? That's something that I think down the line, the NCAA should definitely look into. Now, of course, there is the injury risk similar to preseason games. That's why I think a joint practice might be a little bit better.
I wouldn't even be surprised if at the end of the day, like not soon, but the NFL just goes to more just joint practices and less preseason games in general.
I agree.
I think if there was any year that ASU would benefit from having some sort of preseason scrimmage, joint practice game, it would be this year. This would be the year that would be like, you know what? This is very much needed because, listen, you can expect them to win week 1. I expect them to win week 1.
You should.
Wyoming is not going to just roll over on their bellies and have you pat them. Like, they're going to fight you. Okay?
So wait, real quick. Roll over on their bellies and then pat them like on the back?
Good boy. You know, like, thanks for rolling over and letting me win this game.
Good boy, Cowboys. Good boy.
Like, they're not just gonna roll over and let you win.
Yeah.
And listen, I think that for as high as we can be on a lot of things with this team, and there are a lot of really positive factors that we've seen as far as growing this program, the talent that has been infused, all the different transfers, and so on and so forth. This is still a team that they haven't played a game together. And
10 days.
Which fire me up, but if they're not going to look as good as they are in a couple weeks, right? Like, that's just not going to happen, right? So if you were able to get some of that below your, like just under your belt, you will be in a better place when it comes to week 1 with at least this team. Now, when you talk about college football programs that have this continuity, but listen, I don't know any program that's going to have the same type of continuity over this transfer portal era.
Yeah, you're just not going to see it.
It might become a necessity.
Yeah.
Like, it genuinely might become a necessity.
No, you're 100% right. I do want to get to some comments in the chat before we move on. Will in the chat, are we ever going to get an update on Klemm? Ever is a really long time, so I would expect you will at some point in your lifetime get an update on Jalen Klemm. With that said, in all seriousness, do not expect Jalen Klemm to play or practice this season. If he did, that would be awesome. But more than likely, you will not see Jalen Klemm, at least this season, at Arizona State. Not going to get too deep into the weeds on that. Sharon in the chat, could it be that they just want to get Atkins some reps in the ones as his backup? Absolutely. That could certainly be a scenario. Just kind of want to seeing mixing and matchings, especially on the offensive line, just what's the best recipe for success up there. And again, they ran a lot of situational football today, whether that be 2-minute drill, all sorts of stuff. So when, you can have the opportunity to kind of rotate in offensive linemen specifically, the same as you're going to do with wide receivers and running backs and tight ends. If they do find themselves in that position, right? If Atkins does find himself at left tackle in a 2-minute game, then he will be prepared in that situation. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't read too deep into that. Again, a lot of practice is left. We'll know more kind of as game week starts and kind of preps on that note.
I want to just say one more thing, kind of harping back to the Klemm thing, and it's the same thing I said about Mason Williams. Be a good human. You don't know what's going on.
Be a good human.
And I understand that it can be disappointing when there's somebody that you were excited about possibly not playing, and from what we're understanding, we're not going to expect that to be happening this season. Don't be a dick. Just don't. Okay, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Okay, that's one of my biggest problems sometimes. I love college football fandom. I love how into it everybody gets, but then there's almost a sense of like, oh, you owe me something.
Yeah.
These are human beings.
Don't
these
be
are
a
people.
Dick is a great life motto.
Just these are people. Remember that even if you're disappointed they're not going to be playing.
What's your life motto, Erik?
Have the longest neck.
Pause. Kyle, what is your life motto? Yeah, I mean, you stumbled into that one, buddy.
Just keep swimming.
Dude, that is mine. Just keep swimming is absolutely the best life motto to have. Shout out Dory. Do what Chad Johnson, the great Ocho Cinco, is saying in the chat.
That's my life model.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button is a great one.
HTL.
Ryan Neal in the chat. At what point are we playing too many games, though? The national championship this year is going to play like 16 games, plus they want to expand the playoff. I mean, I think at a certain point you'll see college football, maybe years and years and years from now, kind of get into what the NFL is doing in terms of their schedule, just because there's so much money involved in having these types of games. And the college fan base honestly shows up a lot more, depending on who we're talking about team and program-wise, than some of the NFL programs. So there is money to be made. And where there's money to be made when it comes to football, the NCAA will certainly find it. But you got to get everybody on board.
Well, that's kind of the thing where, hey, man, we've kind of entered that zone of we're not caring as much about the well-being of the athletes. Yeah. The fact that the ACC has teams on the West Coast in it, like we have passed that point. And I'm not saying it's a good thing, but we have very much established that what we are about as college football, and not the we, but the royal we, is making that bread.
No, you're 100%
so
right.
I would not be shocked if that is the main focus, and I wouldn't be shocked if that means more games, because guess what, guys? More games means more TV ratings, means more money, means bigger TV deals, means bigger NIL, so on and so forth.
ACC, Stanford against Syracuse.
Wow.
Over 2,000 miles in between those schools.
I mean, you just got to really want it.
That's crazy, dude. That is absolutely crazy. Will in the chat, the ambiguity around Klemm is confusing, just trying to find out generally what the reason is. We've got reasons for everyone else, but absolutely nothing regarding him is very concerning. That is all. Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, Kenny said pretty early on in camp that personal reasons, and there are certain situations, again, I don't know the complexity of it all, in all honesty, but based off of what I have heard and what we've seen, and kind of the way that the team is functioning, there isn't an expectation that Jalen Klemm will be back this season. But the positive spin on that, another year of eligibility, if he doesn't indeed see the field this year.
And when I say don't take it out on the play or whatever, and I'm not saying this is what you were doing, William, but it's completely understandable to be disappointed on just a purely football level. Like, he was going to be a big addition. He's coming from the best offensive line in college football last year. That's a big deal. And he was going to be a part of what helped this team protect their quarterback. I get all of that. And from a pure football perspective, I will miss him as well. And I get the frustration around that. And I'm not saying you would do this, William, but when you take that feeling and you start to take it out on somebody who is going through something personally, you've crossed the line. So it's a really weird situation, because we all love this team and we want this team to be the absolute best that they can be. And Jalen Klemm would have been a big part of that. We just hope that he has the best. And if he does have another year of eligibility, we hope he's in a place mentally and physically to come back and play next year.
Yeah.
Leave it at that, right? And if we get something, great. And if we don't, there's no reason to dwell on it and harp on it. Let's just move on, right? The ambiguity is gone in the fact that let's just not expect him to play.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's
move on. Let's move on. Let's do it. Okay. Look, we're going to wrap up the show in just a bit. We're going to be talking about our takeaways from fall camp. But first, want to tell you about our lovely partners who sponsored this studio. Of course, we're talking about Circle K. I got this energy drink to fuel me throughout the rest of my wacky Wednesday. Woo! Shout out Circle K for that. But maybe you're not an energy drink person. Maybe you want a Gatorade Zero. Maybe you want a soda. Maybe you want a water. Maybe you want a coffee. Guess what, Eric?
What?
Circle K has all of those things and more, not to mention they've got a ton of snacks. Sweet, spicy, salty, savory, hot, cold, lukewarm. They have it all over at Circle K, including a new free membership program called Inner Circle that's going to help you save money every damn day of the week. Yes, we are talking about Inner Circle, not Inner Square, not Inner Octagon, Inner Circle. Save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups, and then every day after that, save 3 cents per gallon. It can turn into 5 cents per gallon. Isn't that true?
It has for me. Not to brag.
This guy's he's built different when it comes to Inner Circle. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
So a very important life update.
You have an important life update?
Very important life update.
Okay.
So I've been on a mission.
A mission?
To snag some tickets for my lovely wife for her birthday.
You have been mentioning that.
I got them yesterday. And the only reason, I swear, the only reason that I was even able to remotely come close to affording them was our friends over at Game Time.
Yeah.
Because I looked everywhere, and I knew at the end of the day I was going to end up at Game Time, but you've got to do your due diligence because this concert was pricey. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make sure Game Time, they do have this 110% price match guarantee to where if you find somebody who has a better offer than them, they will credit you 110% of the difference. So I figured might as well look and see. And to nobody's surprise, Game Time was the place to be. I got the cheapest tickets. I was able to make her birthday wish come true. And that is only because of Game Time. And guess what? They want to make your baseball dreams come true because they have a Diamondbacks Labor Day offer, 50% off tickets to Dodgers at Diamondbacks game on Labor Day exclusively on Game Time. Limited availability and supply. So get your tickets while they last. It is a Labor Day special. Right. 50% off tickets. Half. That's a lot.
That
is a lot. And listen, they have everything else. I was able to see exactly where these seats are going to be for this concert. I was able to get the all-in pricing feature where you get all of the fees and everything that some sites like to hide from you until you go to check out. Listen, they say, hey, we're going to be upfront with you. They also have the ability to pay over time as well if the price is a little bit too high. And really, they are just here to make the ticket buying experience better. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time! Game time!
Guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, we've talked about fall camp wrapping up today. It was a long few weeks. You obviously had Camp Tantazona in there.
We did?
Let's get to some takeaways from fall camp, huh? Because there was a lot of things we noticed, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, but we each only chose 3. Erik, so let's start with you here. What are your 3 takeaways from fall camp?
Well, my number 1 takeaway is that this defense has chemistry despite all the moving parts. When you have a team that has gone through all of the things that this roster has gone through as far as turnover and changing pieces, it shocked me to see how gelled and how much they were just in it for each other. And it wasn't just an on-the-field thing. Well, that was definitely part of it. I think the defense has by far and away walked away from this camp as the strongest side of the ball, the strongest unit, bar none.
No doubt.
I think they have the most depth, and I do believe they have the most chemistry. And you could tell by the way that they root for each other off the field, the way they are talking to each other, the way that a lot of these leaders are coming from the defensive side. This chemistry on the defensive side of the football for Arizona State University will pay massive dividends, because how do you overcome not playing together for a long time? How do you overcome? Listen, we think this Arizona State roster is more talented than we were last year. There are other people who are looking at this as the worst team in the Big 12. A lot of people. Yeah. How do you overcome that? You play off of each other beautifully. You play with each other and you enhance each other's strengths.
Fired up, man.
Okay?
Just fired up.
This defense is in the position to do that. That was by far and away my biggest takeaway. Do you want me to go through my 3?
Let's go through all of them, man. So you're just on a fucking roll here.
Let's go through number 2, okay? This is a good and a bad takeaway for number 2. Sam Levitt's arm power. Okay, this is part of the reason why he has a starting job, but not the only reason. This can be a blessing and a curse, okay? And let's focus on the blessing first.
Okay, the cannon.
This dude has a freaking arm.
Yeah.
Man, this dude can sling it. He has the potential to make some massive plays downfield and has some extremely speedy wide receivers that can help make those plays. That is something that this offense desperately needs as it is going to emphasize the run game so much, right? There is a negative to it, which is the fact that he needs to control that power, right? Overthrows have been a very big theme for him in camp. I think he's gotten better, but I don't think he's there. And I am looking for him throughout this season to be able to rein that in, because they're not going to call him that deep ball often. So it's not like he's going to get a ton of in-game practice with it. But when it is time to deliver that, he has every tool in the world to deliver that pass. It is now on him to hone that in and to deliver it correctly in the right spot and at the right time. If he can do that, this offense is completely unlocked.
Yeah.
That was my second biggest takeaway. And then let's go to takeaway number 3. It was just the depth, right? We talked about it so many times, position battles, who's fighting for 1s, 2s, 3s at this point. The fact that Troy is 3, as far as he was out with the 3s today as wide receivers go, just goes to show you how much this room has changed, despite even losing. They've lost a majority of their top-end talent from last year.
Or what was evaluated as
their top-end talent.
Yeah, Elijah Badger,
Elijah Badger, obviously being the main part of that. Jaden Rashada, of course, also being a main part of that, despite maybe what's going on now. Still as far as when we were assessing things, he was in that conversation.
Yeah.
There is depth at basically every single room. There are a couple of players that you can consistently look at and say, I know why you're here, and I can see you playing and making an impact. There's depth on the offensive line, the wide receiver room, the running back room, the safeties, the corners, the defensive line. There's a couple of positions where you're looking at, okay, I don't know exactly who's going to step up and be that person, but it's a massive difference from last season, and that it gets me obviously hyped. So those are my big 3 takeaways.
Take a breath,
those are my 3 big takeaways.
Jeez, man, just pew, pew, pew. You're firing those things
Jonathan
off
Gannon. Pew, 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 explosives. Pew, pew, pew.
I love it. Look, our takeaways are a little different. So let's go ahead and get into my first takeaway. And that does involve the defense, kind of like you were talking about the defensive chemistry. For me, the first takeaway is the defense is going to keep ASU in a lot of games this season. Whether the offense decides it's going to produce or not, Arizona State's defense, the depth, the chemistry, the star power among transfers, the development and guys that were here last year is going to be massive when you get to games like Kansas, Utah, Kansas State, even Arizona at the end of the season. I think this defense is going to prevent teams from being able to truly blow out Arizona State, which in that case is going to make life a lot easier on the offense if you don't always have to claw back from a massive deficit. If you're down 10, that's fine. If you're down 7, that's fine. If you have a lead, that's obviously even better. And that ASU defense is going to ensure that that Sun Devil offense has the time to build a little bit of chemistry, to get into a little bit of a rhythm. And you're going to see that week 1, week 2, week 3, and really throughout the entire season. Again, the chemistry has been a big part of that, and that's why that takeaway is what it is. But my second takeaway, this one is something that we've kind of been preaching throughout fall camp, and it's that you guys need to get used to a rotation at wide receiver, linebacker, and of course at corner as well. That depth really, really cycles in to this takeaway, because when you talk about the linebackers specifically, we've seen Cyrus Fiaseu, we've seen Jordan Crook, we've seen Keyshawn Elliott, we've seen Kavion Thunderbird, we've seen Tate Romney, and you guys are going to see those guys just about every single game. I would expect to at least see 4 of those guys every single game. Of course, this is if everybody stays healthy. You should feel confident that at least in the 2 deep, a guy like Caleb McCullough, who we haven't even really talked about this camp, is also going to be getting in some action. Those transfers, obviously, Fiaseu, Crook, and Keyshawn Elliott are going to be massive. I was telling somebody out there today that Jordan Crook has really been super impressive and kind of surprising, to be completely honest with you. You knew that you were getting a linebacker from the SEC who didn't necessarily play a ton of reps at linebacker last season. And the fact of the matter is he's had just a phenomenal fall camp and spring ball as well, to the point now where he is certainly going to be in the rotation, if not a starting linebacker. And then at wide receiver, we talked a little bit about it earlier in the show. You're going to see Jake Smith, even though he's not starting. You're going to see Troy O'Meary, even though he's not starting. You are going to see Xavier Guillory, even though he's not starting. And those are just a couple of the names that you can expect to see at wide receiver. Somebody brought it up out at camp practice today. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a giant gap in receiving numbers this season among the wide receivers, because you are going to have so many guys trickling in and out to keep those legs fresh. And you got a lot of talent at wide receiver that all offer different unique skill sets that could be beneficial to this offense. And then, of course, at corner, we've already talked about Shamari Simmons stepping up in that rotation with Cole Martin for the nickel spot after the retirement of Mason Williams. You know that you've got guys like LaTerrence Welch, Keontez Bradley, Rodney Bimage in the secondary that are likely going to back up guys like a Javen Robinson, going to back up a Keith Abney, who I know is juiced. Talked to him after practice today. So that's a big part of what you're going to see that Arizona State didn't have last season, is that you're going to see rotation. You're going to see guys at the end of the year, and you're going to be like, why didn't they have better numbers?
Right.
And it's because their coaches were doing the right thing in keeping them fresh. Now, don't get me wrong. If a guy's having a night, he's going to be in there. Like, that's just football. But until those moments happen, feel confident that you have enough guys out there to really provide this team with some depth. And my final takeaway of camp, kind of what we talked a little bit about earlier, the offensive tackles need to prove themselves. And at this point, you can't do it in practice. You got to do it in the game. At right tackle, whether that be Mad Max or Emmit Bohle, if he ends up playing right tackle. On the left end, whether that be Emmit, Josh Atkins, doesn't matter. These guys haven't necessarily totally run away with the jobs in camp. That has probably been made clear based off of what we saw from Atkins today at left tackle. Mm-hmm. At this point, you're not going to be able to prove it in practice. You got to go out there in a game. You got to do it against Wyoming. You got to do it against an SEC team in Mississippi State. You got to do it against a good group of 5 school in Texas State. And then obviously when conference play comes, you got to do it against some really talented Big 12 defenses as well. This offense, yes, it's only going to be as good as Sam Leavitt is, but Sam Leavitt is only going to be as good as those offensive tackles are. He could use an extra second, right? He could use an extra 2 seconds. Especially as a young quarterback still going into his first year of the system, new talent around him, new offensive coordinator, a new coach for him. So those offensive tackles are going to be huge to the success of this team. But those are our takeaways from fall camp. Let us know in the comments what you think. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. And Erik, I think it's time. I think it's time, right?
Yeah.
You and Kyle have been working on this masterpiece for a couple weeks now.
It's here. It's here. Listen, there's a lot going on here at PHNX Sports, and there's been something that's been on Kyle's and I's plate for quite some time. If I haven't mentioned it, which I don't think I've said it once, Kyle and I went up to Camp T, and we went up there with a little bit of a different mission than the normal, hey, let's cover practice. Let's just say what's going on with the scrimmage and whatnot. And we did that.
Yeah, you raised the bar.
You know, we did a whole show on that. And if you still haven't watched it, it's on this channel. But I really wanted to talk to the fans, the Sun Devil faithful, and the people on just what exactly this Camp T experience means, because this is something that's been going on for a really, really long time. And for those of you that aren't aware of the history in Camp T, this video that we're putting out is a really beautiful representation of what's going on. And I also heard some parallels comparing Kenny Dillingham to the man who has the field named after him.
Papa Kush?
Yeah. And I just found that just so special. So we have a couple minutes from it that we're going to share with you guys right now. This video is live, fully live, up on PHNX Sports right now, right this second. So stay with us, watch this little bit of a trailer, end the show with us, and then right after that, you're going to want to go watch that video, hit that like button, and let us know that you appreciate the content, because I appreciated talking to all the wonderful people out there. Without further ado, let's roll just a little taste of our Camp T experience. Every year, when the Sun Devils head up to Camp Tontozona, or more commonly referred to as Camp T, they bring a whole lot of history with them. History that dates back 60 plus years.
I've been here for 46 years, since 1978, when my brother was a freshman here. He was recruited by Frank Kush. And back then, this was a rock field. It literally, every day, the guys would walk the field and have to pick the rocks up because of their thermal unbalance. You know, the rocks would work themselves to the surface every day. And the next day, big rocks again, and they just throw them all in the river. And so this field was largely dirt with a couple patches of grass.
The Sun Devils are in a rebuild, led by young head coach Kenny Dillingham, in fact, the youngest in college football. However, his early success and enthusiasm has reminded Sun Devil faithful of a former legendary head coach.
We love the fact that Kenny is our coach, because Frank Kush came in about the same age and had the same challenges to activate the Valley. And he went to all the business people and kind of built it properly. And Frank built this place. He literally was driving along the road and he pulled off, walked down here, and he saw this clearing, and he asked all the and they were working on the highway back then, back in the early 60s, and he convinced the guys to come down here with the bulldozers and help clear the field.
Fast forward to 2024, and ASU Sun Devil faithful who have been attending Camp T for decades not only get to watch the team practice, but get to be among other fans as football season is as close as ever.
It's a place that I look forward to every year. In fact, this morning I woke up at 1:38 and I couldn't go back to sleep. It's a place where a team can bond, develop camaraderie. It's just a pristine place that no other university has in this country. And just proud of the fact that they that they could come back here, and I would just wish that they stayed a little bit longer.
We appreciate everybody who took some time out of their day to come and talk to us. We talked to just some incredible Sun Devil fans. Obviously, John and Rudy were there. John, his brother, played back in the 1970s, Brian Caldwell, and has been just an absolute amazing Sun Devil supporter. We got very lucky with the people that we grabbed. Everybody was so generous with their time. If you want to check that out, please go do that on PHNX Sports. We even have comments from DJ Foster's dad, who I grabbed by accident. The first person I grabbed, I was like, hey, you seem like you know what's going on. Can I grab you and talk to you for just a minute or two? And he's like, sure. And he was like, you know DJ? I'm like, Foster? He was like, yeah. He was like, that's my kid. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So you do know something about the program.
Yeah. And just some really, really cool stuff there. And that is something that, I'm very proud of. I'm really appreciative of Kyle. Kyle, again, taking his free time and coming up with me when he did not have to do that. Kyle did a lot of the editing on this and putting everything together. I just kind of sat there and was like, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And Kyle was awesome with that. And hopefully we can do some similar stuff like that in the future. But let us know if you like it. Yeah. And if we don't do it for the numbers, but if it does well, it'll be a lot easier to, make that pitch of, hey, let's go out and let's go do something like that more again. And there's even some interview cuts that we didn't use. So we might put together some more stuff and just drop that little interview pack right there as well. But yeah, that's it. We appreciate you guys watching that. We appreciate you guys tuning into this show. And
absolutely.
Just jump right over there. It's live right now.
That was some fire stuff. Shout out Kyle. Shout out Erik. And shout out everybody up at Camp T that makes that possible. Everybody that you guys spoke to. That was really awesome work. Really excited to see that full cut. Again, it's here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed to PHNX Sports on YouTube. Said it a million times. I'll say it one more. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and drop a 5-star review. And if you enjoyed the content, give us a follow at PHNX_Sun Devils. You can follow me at Anthony_Totri. You can follow Long Neck Larry over here at Erik Ruby. That is Erik with a K. You can follow DJ Coop at K Coop Sports. Also want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsors, of course, Circle K, and then Coach Stark Holmes, a Sun Devil through and through. If you're in the market for a home, give him a call. But as always, guys, we will be back tomorrow live at 1:30, continuing to talk about Arizona State athletics. We do it every single day. The only podcast out there that does it. Boom. Go Devils. And peace.
We all silly like the mayor.